Arizona Territory, 1875. The unforgiving desert night fell like a curtain across the jagged mountains as Takovi rode through the scrubland. At 25, he moved with the confidence of a man who understood the language of the wilderness. His dark hair hung just past his shoulders, contrasting with the deep amber of his skin, weathered by seasons under the southwestern sun. The Apache scout wore simple buckskin leggings and a cotton shirt acquired in trade months before. Takovi carried a belief as firm as the mountains that had sheltered his people for generations. Love was a luxury the frontier denied men like him. The U.S. cavalry's relentless campaigns against his tribe had taught him that attachment meant vulnerability, and vulnerability meant death. His father had lost everything loving his mother, first her to illness, then himself to grief. The lesson seemed clear. In this blood-soaked territory, sentiment was a fatal weakness. What Takovi wanted was simple: to protect what remained of his band, to navigate the dangerous space between his world and the ever-encroaching settlers. What he needed, though he would never have admitted it, was something to heal the isolation that had become as much a part of him as his own shadow. 3 days of tracking had left him exhausted but vigilant. Cavalry patrols had been pushing deeper into traditional Apache lands, and understanding their movements meant survival for his people. The thunderstorm building on the horizon matched his mood, dark and electric with tension. The first heavy drops began to fall as he spotted smoke rising from a small homestead nestled against the foothills. Takovi had mapped most frontier outposts in his territory, but this one was unfamiliar. New settlers, likely unaware they had built on sacred Apache hunting grounds. Lightning split the sky as the downpour intensified. With his horse growing skittish in the storm, Takovi made a decision that would alter the course of his life. He would seek temporary shelter in the settler's barn and continue his journey at first light. As he approached through sheets of rain, the small homestead revealed its humble character, a modest wooden cabin with a newly built barn beside it. No dogs barked at his arrival, and no lantern lights spilled from the cabin windows to signal watchful eyes. Takovi had just led his horse into the shelter of the barn when the door to the cabin swung open. A figure holding a rifle stepped into the threshold, silhouetted by lantern light behind. "Who's there?" The voice was unmistakably female, strong despite its youth, attempting to project authority through obvious fear. Takovi froze, calculating his options. He could disappear into the storm or face the settler. Running would only confirm the stories told about his people: savages, thieves in the night, only seeking shelter from the storm. He called back, his English clear and deliberate, learned during 3 years at the government school before he escaped back to his people. The figure stepped forward, and the rain caught the golden hair that escaped from beneath her bonnet, hair the color of desert wheat under summer sun. She was young, perhaps 20, with eyes that reminded him of the sky after storm clouds cleared. Her simple blue calico dress was practical rather than decorative, and she held the rifle with the familiarity of someone raised to understand its necessity. "Come into the light where I can see you," she commanded, though her voice wavered slightly. Takovi stepped forward, hands visible, face illuminated by a flash of lightning. Her eyes widened in recognition of his heritage, but the expected fear didn't follow. Instead, she studied him with wary curiosity. "I am Olivia Zimmerman," she said, lowering her rifle slightly, but keeping it ready. "This is my land." "Your land now, perhaps," Takovi responded. "My people hunted here for generations before." A flicker of something, comprehension, perhaps, crossed her face. "You speak English well. And you stand alone on a homestead far from any neighbor," he observed. "That takes courage." Another crack of thunder punctuated his words, and Olivia's gaze flitted to the worsening storm, then back to the Apache before her. In that moment, Takovi saw something unexpected in her expression, not just fear or suspicion, but loneliness that matched his own. "You can stay until morning," she said, the words that would change everything between them. Her eyes met his, and time seemed to stand still, stretched between heartbeats as something unspoken passed between them. "I thank you," he replied simply, though the words felt inadequate for the risk she was taking by offering shelter to an Apache in territory where such kindness could be seen as treason. "Not in my house," she clarified quickly. "The barn will keep you dry." Takovi nodded, understanding the boundaries of frontier hospitality. The barn is more than enough. As she retreated to her cabin, Takovi settled in the barn, spreading his blanket on fresh hay. The homestead itself told a story. The cabin was well-constructed but small, the fencing unfinished, the garden struggling against the harsh Arizona soil. Everything spoke of determination battling against overwhelming odds. Morning arrived with cleared skies and an uncomfortable awareness between them. Olivia brought a tin cup of coffee to the barn door, but didn't enter. "My husband died 6 months ago," she said without preamble, explaining the absence Takovi had noticed. "Fever took him before we'd finished building." "You stayed," Takovi observed, accepting the coffee with a nod of thanks. "Where would I go?" "Back east to family who told me this venture would kill me." Defiance flashed in her eyes. "I'll prove them wrong." "Alone?" "I manage," she replied, chin lifting slightly. As Takovi prepared to leave, he noticed the broken irrigation channel that explained the struggling garden. Without comment, he dismounted and began repairing it. Olivia watched from the doorway, suspicious at first, then curious. "Why help?" she finally asked. Takovi paused, hands deep in Arizona mud. "The land was my people's. It should provide for those who respect it." By midday, he had repaired not only the irrigation but also reinforced a sagging corner of the barn. As he mounted to leave, Olivia stood in the yard, conflict visible on her face. "The cavalry patrol passes every third day," she said, the warning clear in her tone. "Tomorrow they'll be here." Takovi nodded his understanding, both of the information and the fact she had chosen to share it. "Perhaps I will return when they have gone." "Perhaps," she echoed, neither invitation nor dismissal. True to his word, Takovi returned 4 days later, bringing with him a desert hare. Olivia's surprise quickly gave way to practical acceptance. Meat was meat, and her supplies were dwindling. They shared the meal outside as sunset painted the mountains in gold and crimson. "Why did you come to this place?" he asked as darkness settled around them. Olivia gazed toward the mountains. "Victor, my husband, had dreams of cattle ranching. I had dreams of escape from Philadelphia society where a woman's worth was measured by her marriage prospects." She smiled sadly. "Now I have freedom, but not much else." "Freedom is worth much," Takovi replied, thinking of his own people confined to the reservation, those who had chosen captivity over constant flight. "And you? Why do you ride alone when your people stay together?" Takovi hesitated, weighing truth against caution. "I scout for them. The more we know about cavalry movements, the safer we remain." Understanding dawned in her eyes. "You're watching troop patterns. That's why you're here." He nodded, waiting for the fear or anger that usually followed such revelations. Instead, she simply nodded back. "We each do what we must to survive," Olivia said, and in that moment, a fragile trust formed between them. Over the following weeks, Takovi returned every few days, always after the cavalry patrols had passed. Each visit brought some small offering, game, knowledge of which wild plants could supplement her garden, repairs to her homestead that would have taken her weeks alone. Olivia began to share her own skills, reading from the few books she'd brought west, showing him improved methods for tanning hides, playing simple melodies on a battered harmonica that had belonged to her husband. With each exchange, the space between their worlds narrowed. One evening as they sat before a small fire outside the cabin, Olivia asked the question that had lingered between them. "Your people, would they not punish you for helping a settler?" Takovi's gaze remained on the flames. "Some would. Others understand that old ways must sometimes bend to new realities." "And what do you believe?" Her blue eyes reflected the firelight as she watched him. "I believe that wisdom can be found in unexpected places," he answered, looking up to meet her gaze. "Even in the eyes of a woman my people would call enemy." The moment stretched between them, possibilities expanding in the silence until Olivia looked away, her cheeks flushed. "It's getting late." That night, Takovi camped in the hills overlooking her homestead rather than returning immediately to his people. From his vantage point, he could see the small square of lantern light from her cabin window. Something was changing in him, a dangerous softening he couldn't afford. Yet he remained, watching over her through the night. The following morning, he was preparing to leave when dust on the horizon signaled approaching riders, too many and too early to be the regular patrol. Takovi quickly rode down to warn Olivia. 7 riders coming fast, he told her as she emerged from the cabin. Not military by their movement. Fear flashed across her face. Raiders, maybe. There have been reports of deserters attacking remote homesteads. Hide in the root cellar, he instructed. I will lead them away. Olivia shook her head. This is my home. I won't abandon it. Then we defend together. Takovi decided, knowing he was crossing a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Choosing to fight alongside a settler against white men, even raiders, would be seen as betrayal by many of his tribe. They prepared quickly, positioning themselves with the tactical advantage of surprise. When the riders arrived, their intentions became immediately clear. They were the same band of deserters who had been terrorizing the territory, men with nothing left to lose after abandoning the army. Well, their leader called out, spotting Olivia on the porch with her rifle. Looks like we found ourselves a widow woman all alone. Not alone. Takovi called from his hidden position, arrow nocked and ready. The confrontation erupted into violence when one of the raiders fired at the sound of his voice. Takovi's arrow found its mark in the man's shoulder, while Olivia's rifle bark took down another. The remaining deserters scattered for cover, realizing their easy target had unexpected defenses. The firefight was brief but vicious. When it ended, 2 raiders lay dead, 1 wounded, and the rest had fled back toward the horizon they'd appeared from. Olivia stood trembling on the porch, a bleeding graze across her arm where a bullet had come too close. They will return with more men, Takovi said as he bandaged her wound with gentle hands. The touch between them lingered, charged with unspoken emotions. Then I should leave, she replied, though her tone lacked conviction. Or we prepare better, he suggested, surprising himself with the offer. My people know how to defend against greater numbers. That night, necessity overcame propriety. With raiders likely to return, they both remained in the cabin, Takovi near the door, Olivia in her small bed behind a hanging sheet that served as the only partition in the one-room structure. Why risk yourself for me? She asked into the darkness. Your people would not approve. Takovi stared at the ceiling, considering his answer carefully. Perhaps I grow tired of seeing the world only as us and them. Perhaps there is wisdom in finding new paths. Silence stretched between them until Olivia spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. I was so certain when we came west, so sure that a fresh start would make everything clear. Instead, nothing is as I expected. The land changes all who come to it, Takovi replied. Apache, settler, soldier, none remain as they were. And us? Her question hung in the air. What are we becoming? He had no answer that wouldn't challenge everything he believed about his place in the world. The next morning brought no raiders, but something equally consequential, a patrol of cavalry led by Lieutenant Vernon Osborne, a man known among Takovi's people for his ruthless pursuit of Apache bands. Takovi barely had time to disappear into the hills before the soldiers arrived. From his hiding place, he watched through his spyglass as Osborne dismounted and approached Olivia. Even at a distance, Takovi could see the lieutenant's interest in her went beyond military concerns. The thought kindled an unexpected fire in his chest. When the patrol finally departed, Takovi returned cautiously to find Olivia agitated and pacing. Lieutenant Osborne says they've increased patrols due to Apache activity, she reported. He offered military protection if I'd consider relocating closer to the fort. Her eyes met Takovi's. He also made it clear such protection might come with personal expectations. What did you tell him? Takovi asked, his voice carefully neutral despite the anger rising within him. That I manage fine on my own. Olivia's chin lifted with the same defiance he'd come to recognize and admire. But he'll be back. Men like Osborne don't accept refusal easily. That evening, as they reinforced the cabin's defenses against the potential return of the raiders, the unspoken grew too heavy to bear. If the cavalry knew you helped me, Olivia began, they would hang me as a renegade. Takovi finished matter-of-factly. And if your people knew, some would understand. Others would see only betrayal. Olivia's hands stilled on the wooden board she'd been nailing in place. Then why risk it? Takovi met her gaze directly. Because some things matter more than the boundaries others create for us. The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility. When Olivia finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. I think about you when you're gone, she confessed. I worry for your safety. I wonder if you think of me. I do, Takovi admitted, the simple truth more frightening than any battle, more than is wise. That night, seated before the fire, the distance between them diminished until it vanished altogether. Their first kiss was tentative, a question asked and answered in the same breath. The second was a declaration of defiance against a world that would keep them apart, of hope that something new could be built from the ashes of their separate pasts. Morning brought clarity and fear in equal measure. What had seemed possible in firelight looked impossible in harsh daylight. Takovi prepared to return to his people, needing to warn them of the increased patrols. This cannot be, he said as he saddled his horse. The world will not allow it. Then we change the world, Olivia replied with stubborn determination. Or we create our own. For 2 weeks, they lived in separate realities that intersected only in brief, precious moments. Takovi moving with his band deeper into the mountains to avoid the intensified cavalry presence. Olivia fending off increasingly insistent visits from Lieutenant Osborne, whose interest had hardened into possessive determination. The situation reached its breaking point when Takovi returned to find Olivia with a bruised cheek and fire in her eyes. Osborne, he asked, rage building as she nodded. He said no decent woman refuses military protection in Apache territory unless she's already compromised. Her voice remained steady despite the humiliation. He tried to claim what he believes is rightfully his. Did he? No, she interrupted. I may look delicate, but my father taught his daughters to defend themselves. Osborne left with more than wounded pride. Takovi's relief gave way to grim understanding. He will return with men. This is the excuse he needs to search your property, to find any evidence of Apache presence. Then we leave, Olivia said with sudden clarity. Together. The proposal hung between them. Impossible, necessary, transformative. My people, he began. Would they accept me? She interrupted. Takovi hesitated, honesty warring with hope. Some, not all. And you would never again know the life you came west expecting. That life died with Victor, she replied. I'm not afraid of building something new. They prepared through the night, packing only what was essential. As dawn approached, Takovi's senses alerted him to approaching danger. Peering through the pre-dawn gloom, he spotted riders, not cavalry in formation, but the raiders returning as promised, with reinforced numbers. They've come, he warned Olivia. At least 10 men. They had prepared for this possibility, but hoped to be gone before it materialized. Now they faced an impossible choice: flee and be caught in the open, or make their stand. The root cellar, Olivia decided. We collapse the entrance after we're inside. They'll burn the cabin, but they won't find us below. It was their only chance. As the raiders approached, Takovi and Olivia retreated to the small underground space where she stored preserved foods for winter. The cramped cellar had been dug deep into the cool earth, its entrance disguised by a trapdoor in the cabin floor. They pulled the door shut just as the first raiders burst into the cabin, and Takovi quickly collapsed the entrance, sending dirt and debris cascading down to seal them in. Above, they heard the sounds of destruction: furniture smashed, supplies stolen, and finally, the crackling of flames as the raiders set fire to the structure. In the darkness of the cellar, they held each other, listening as their world burned above them. Hours passed before the sounds of destruction ceased and the raiders departed, satisfied they had left nothing but ashes. When they finally emerged through the alternative exit Takovi had insisted on creating, the devastation was complete. The cabin was a smoldering ruin, the barn partially collapsed, the garden trampled. Olivia stood amid the destruction, tears streaming silently down her face. Everything gone, she whispered. Takovi stood beside her, understanding her loss. Not everything. You live. We live. She turned to him, grief transforming into resolve. Then we make something new from what remains. Their journey began that day, not toward the Apache camps as originally planned, but westward, toward the untamed territories where neither cavalry nor tribal boundaries held as much sway. They traveled light and careful, avoiding settlements and patrols alike. For Takovi, each mile took him further from the certainties that had defined his existence: his role as scout, his place among his people, his understanding of himself as separate from the world of settlers. For Olivia, The journey stripped away the last vestiges of the Philadelphia society girl she had once been. 10 days into their flight, disaster struck. A cavalry patrol spotted them crossing an exposed valley. The soldiers gave chase, forcing them to separate, Takovi leading them away from Olivia, promising to find her at their predetermined meeting point. The pursuit lasted hours before Takovi finally lost the cavalryman in a narrow canyon. When he returned to the meeting place, Olivia was nowhere to be found. For 3 days, he searched, fear growing with each passing hour. Had she been captured? Killed? Had she reconsidered their impossible future and returned to her own kind? On the 4th day, he found evidence of her passage, a torn piece of her blue dress tied to a juniper branch, pointing the way she had gone. Following the trail, he discovered her sheltering in a cave, feverish from an infected cut received during their separation. "I feared you captured," she murmured as he cradled her burning face, "or that you had reconsidered the wisdom of choosing a white woman over your people." "My choice is made," he said, gathering water to cool her fever. "Now we must ensure you live to share it." For a week, Takovi nursed Olivia back from the brink, using all the medicinal knowledge his people had taught him. During her delirium, she spoke of her past, of parents who had disowned her for marrying beneath her station, of dreams that had withered in the harsh reality of frontier life, of her growing love for a man she had been taught to fear. When her fever finally broke, something had changed between them. The crisis had burned away any remaining pretense. They were bound now not just by choice, but by survival itself. "I saw my husband while I was lost in fever," Olivia confessed as they sat before their small fire. "He told me to find happiness where I could." Takovi took her hand, feeling the calluses that had replaced the softness of her previous life. "And have you found it?" "I begin to believe it's possible," she answered. "Even here, even now, even with everything lost." "Not lost," he corrected gently. "Transformed." They continued westward, eventually reaching a hidden valley nestled in mountains no settler had claimed and no tribe occupied permanently. A clear stream cut through meadows rich with game, and ancient stone formations provided natural shelter that could be improved upon. "Here," Takovi said after exploring the valley thoroughly. "Here we can build something that belongs to neither world but only to us." Through summer and into fall, they created their sanctuary. Takovi built a cabin stronger than the one raiders had destroyed, incorporating both Apache wisdom and the construction techniques Olivia had learned from her husband. Olivia planted a garden with seeds she had carried in her pockets during their flight, supplemented with native plants Takovi showed her. As winter approached, they formalized their union in a ceremony that honored both their traditions. Takovi's people's rituals of binding their lives together beneath open sky, and the exchange of vows Olivia remembered from her Eastern upbringing. No witnesses attended except the mountains and stars, but the commitment was no less sacred for its privacy. Their first winter tested everything they had built, not just the physical structures, but the bond between them. Confined together in their small cabin as snow piled high outside, they learned each other's habits, fears, hopes, and dreams. They argued, reconciled, and discovered the complex dance of two strong individuals choosing to move through life as one. When spring finally arrived, it brought not only renewal to the land, but new life within Olivia herself. The child growing inside her represented everything they had defied tradition to create, neither fully of one world or the other, but something new and hopeful. "What will we tell our child about who they are?" Olivia asked one evening, her hand resting on her growing belly. "Apache? White?" "Neither." Takovi considered the question with the seriousness it deserved. "We will tell them they are the future, proof that boundaries exist only in men's minds, not in their hearts." As her time grew near, Takovi journeyed to a distant trading post, risking discovery to obtain supplies they would need for the birth. There, he heard rumors of Lieutenant Osborne's obsessive search for the kidnapped widow woman, and of growing tensions between the Apache bands and the cavalry. Returning to their valley, Takovi found Olivia radiant despite her discomfort, tending the garden that would feed them through another winter. The sight of her, golden hair now streaked with sun, skin tanned by outdoor work, eyes clear with purpose, confirmed everything he had come to believe. His people's wisdom taught that everything was connected, that artificial divisions between humans were illusions. Their love was not a rejection of his heritage, but its deepest affirmation. Their daughter was born as autumn painted the valley in gold and crimson. They named her Dawn, symbolizing the new day their union represented. In her features, they saw both their bloodlines. Olivia's fair coloring and Takovi's copper undertones, her blue eyes and his high cheekbones. She was beautiful, healthy, and entirely herself, not half of anything, but wholly new. As the years passed, their sanctuary grew. Takovi occasionally encountered hunting parties from his former band and established cautious relations that eventually blossomed into limited trade. Olivia's skill with plants created medicines sought after by settlers in distant communities, brought to them by trusted traders who asked no questions about the unusual family. Dawn grew into a child who moved confidently between worlds, speaking both her parents' languages, carrying both their traditions in her heart. When she was 5, Takovi took her to the highest point in their valley and showed her the vast landscape beyond. Out there, he explained, people believe some boundaries cannot be crossed. They would say your mother and I should have remained separated by those invisible lines. That's foolish, the child declared with the certainty only the very young possess. Yes, Takovi agreed, smiling at his daughter's wisdom. The only boundaries that matter are the ones we choose to honor. That evening, as Dawn slept in the small room they had added to their cabin, Takovi and Olivia sat before their hearth, hands intertwined as they had been for 7 years. Do you ever regret it? Takovi asked, the question he had never dared voice before. Leaving everything behind, Olivia's gaze moved from their sleeping child to the home they had built together, then finally to his face, lined now with the experiences they had shared. I left nothing that matters, she replied. Everything of value came with me. In that moment, Takovi recognized the completeness of his transformation. The young scout who had believed love was a luxury the frontier denied men like him had become a man who understood that love was not luxury, but necessity, the foundation upon which all else could be built. When you said, you can stay until morning that first night, he recalled, did you ever imagine this? Olivia smiled, the memory of that rainy evening vivid despite the years between. No, but when our eyes met, time stood still, and I felt something impossible beginning. Not impossible, Takovi corrected gently, just previously unimagined. Outside their window, stars wheeled across the sky above their valley, their sanctuary, their home, their proof that love could indeed transform the wild frontier into a place of belonging.